One random tip for every single survivor perk in Dead by Daylight, let's go. Ace in the hole. A lot of people forget that this perk lets you keep your add-ons if you escape with that item, so you can use this perk as kind of a scuffed white ward if you want to. Adrenaline. This perk is better when used aggressively rather than defensively. If you have a gen 99, tell your friend to go to that gen and wait to pop it. You can now go take a protection hit for a teammate and save them from a camping killer and get a free escape out of there. Aftercare. Stop playing so aggressively with this perk. If you want to play aggressively, use Empathy or Bond. This perk resets every time you're hooked, so if you want to utilize its full potential, you need to avoid the killer as much as possible. Alert. Many people use this perk just to see where the killer is and if you're safe to continue working on your gen. However, you should also be using this perk to mentally map out where the killer has broken pallets and breakable doors so that you can understand which sections of the map you may want to avoid and chase. Any means necessary. Pair this perk with Lithe and then dumb tech the killer. This means you stun the killer and then vault through them. Since you have Lithe, you'll be able to get to another loop, and since you're on the same side of the pallet, the killer will most likely want to chase you instead of breaking the pallet. You can come back later and pick that pallet back up. Appraisal. I'm not sure if this has been patched, but rummaging chests with Appraisal counts towards the tome challenges for unlocking chests. Autodidact. Bring this perk with a medkit. I know the perk deactivates if you're healing another survivor with a medkit, but you can use this to your advantage. There are many times where you need to finish a heal because the killer's coming, but the Autodidact keeps bringing the progress bar down. With the medkit, you prevent those situations. Background player. If you're injured and using this perk to be relatively nearby for a flashlight or pallet save, make sure you crouch where you are. It reduces your grunts of pain to make it even less likely for the killer to know where you are. Alternatively, you could use Iron Will, but that might be a bit overkill. Balanced landing. Remember that you don't only have to use this perk in chase. It's also a very good perk for traversability. It's similar to Sprint Burst in the sense that if you're always saving it for chase, you're never going to get the full potential out of it. Better than new. This is a pretty straightforward perk, but just please be smart about which person you're healing. Like for example, if you're playing an M1 killer that is saved the best for last, healing the Obsession would be your smartest move because they are the least likely to get hit, which resets this perk. Bite the bullet. Please do not run this perk without other perks. It's very difficult to get value out of this perk if killers can just follow your blood trails. Lucky Break is an amazing perk to pair with Bite the Bullet since you can get hit, run away without leaving scratch marks or blood, and silently heal yourself in a dark corner. Blast Mine. When a teammate puts Blast Mine on a gen, it'll turn the aura of that gen yellow. However, there are also other perks that do this, like Situational Awareness, so the way to tell that it's Blast Mine is to look for a flashbang that appears on the top of the generator. War Thunder. By clicking on the link in the description, you can download the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made for completely free. It has more than 2,000 incredibly detailed and immersive tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from the 1920s to the present day. That link in the description is an easy way for you to get an action-packed, tactical, and realistic experience with intense PvP battles that have a ton of different playstyles. One of my favorite parts about War Thunder is the fact that vehicles don't just take damage on a health bar, they actually suffer damage to their components and crew instead. In my opinion, this is one of the most unique aspects of the game that makes it stand out compared to other games. Play War Thunder now for free on PC, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and previous console generations using my link in the description or in the pinned comment. If you use my link, you'll receive a large free bonus pack with multiple premium vehicles, a premium account, boosters, and much more. Blood Pact. Pair this perk with For the People. If there's a slugging situation, you can instantly heal someone and both of you will gain the Blood Pact effect since For the People makes you the Obsession. So it's an easy way to get a teammate out of a sticky situation. Blood Rush. You can pair this perk with Mettle of Man to ensure that you get automatically healed even if you take a hit during the period of time where you're injured. Boil Over. A lot of people forget about this perk's secondary effect where it hides the auras of nearby hooks when the killer is carrying you. So you can use this perk with indoor map offerings to make it very difficult for the killer to figure out where to hook you, especially if you have another teammate with Breakout. Bond. Yes, you can use this perk offensively to go for saves, but you can also use it defensively while in generators to see if the teammate is being chased towards you so you know where they're coming from. This is especially useful for new players on indoor maps. Boon Circle of Healing. Stop blessing the first totem you see. Circle of Healing should be placed on double story areas of the maps or on the edges of the maps to be able to take full advantage of it. Otherwise, it's going to get broken pretty easily. Boon Dark Theory. This perk is terrible, so just don't use it, but if you do want to use it, at least throw on some other haste perks so that you can feel like the 2% is helping you at all. Boon Exponential. Put this boon on totems in 2-story areas and preferably closer to the middle of the map or in high traffic areas of the map, so people will likely go down nearby. Yes, it'll get broken easier by the killer, but if it's nowhere near where the survivors are going to be anyway, then there's no point in running this perk. Boon Shadow Step. Shadow Step is a good perk to pair with Circle of Healing because it hides your auras, and healing is a vulnerable thing to do since the killer can interrupt you, which means that 2 people just wasted a lot of time. Plus, it gives you 2 boon effects for doing the same amount of blessing time. Borrowed Time. This is genuinely one of the best perks to have in endgame situations. So if you're running this perk, make sure you're the one to get saves if you can. Killers during the endgame will start to camp and tunnel, and this perk obviously helps the person that you unhook get the extra endurance time, but remember that it extends their haste by 10 seconds as well. Since since the killer will likely be hooking survivors near the exit gates during the endgame, borrowed time almost guarantees that the survivor you unhook can make it to the gate. Botany Knowledge. Remember that this perk now reduces your healing efficiency of medkits by 20% on top of the medkits reducing efficiency by 33%, so you'll need a lot of charges to just get one full heal. If you're confused about the math with the new medkits, I'll leave a link in the description below, which hopefully helps. Breakdown. Try to plan ahead what hooks you may want to break and go down near them when your chase is about to end. If you have good map knowledge about areas of the map that have a severe lack of hooks, you can use this perk to force hook dead zones, which can be really detrimental to the killer. Breakout. You're going to be taking a lot of hits with this perk, so make sure you understand exactly how to prevent the killer from hooking the survivor. You can body block by crouching right underneath the actual hook part of the hook, and crouching makes your hitbox smaller, making it harder to hit you, but you still prevent the killer from hooking the survivor. Buckle up. Pair this perk with 4 other people to easily get out of a slugging situation. In the upcoming patch 7.1.0, which will probably be out by the time this video is released, Buckle Up gives both you and the other player endurance if you heal them off the ground, and for the people, of course, heals them instantly off the ground. Built to last. This perk counts towards the depleting item tome challenges, so you can get this done in one single match. Calm Spirit. Remember that this perk makes opening chests and interacting with totems completely silent, so use that to your advantage. Clairvoyance. Try not to cleanse totems to activate this perk if you know the killer has Hex Pedimento. Generally, the pros of aura reading do not outweigh the cons of Pentimento. If needed, try to wait until gens are completed to cleanse your totem so you can still get the auras of the hatch and the exit gates without Pentimento affecting gen speeds. Corrective Action. Only use this perk if you're teaching your friend how to play DBD. There's almost no other reason to use this perk. Counterforce. If you're trying to cleanse all 5 totems with this perk, don't fall into the common trap of cleansing the first totem, then going to find the totem that is revealed to you, and repeating this. The aura that's revealed to you is the furthest totem away from you, so you'll waste a lot of time going back and forth. Instead, just keep that totem's location in the back of your mind and check other nearby totem spawns. Cut Loose. Pair this perk with other stealth perks to confuse the killer. Things like Quick and Quiet, Dance With Me, or even Lucky Break may help you get the full potential out of this perk. Dance With Me. Unfortunately, you should almost always bring other perks to synergize with this one, like Lithe or Quick and Quiet. Otherwise, you're probably not going to get any value out of this perk. Dark Sense. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this perk still works against stealth killers. You won't be able to see their aura, but the timer on the perk will start going down. Dead Hard. Since you can only dead hard twice in a match now, you can actually pair it with other exhaustion perks without them totally counteracting each other throughout the match. Deception. One really funny thing you can do with this perk is use your deception and then point at the locker. The killer might think that you're telling them that your teammate just got inside and will try to take advantage of them by instantly downing them. Obviously, this isn't exactly practical and will probably only work once, but it's a funny thing to do nonetheless. Decisive Strike. Sometimes you may want to consider not immediately using your DS and using it after your next unhook. These situations are few and far between, but it could help you better when you're on your death hook. Deliverance. Prioritize stealth at the beginning of the match always. You do not want to be the first person found because then this perk is useless. Be patient and be stealthy when the game starts until you're able to secure that unhook to activate this perk. Desperate Measures. You can 99 survivors healing bars to still keep them injured and keep that bonus healing speed if you want to heal another nearby person faster. Then you can finish healing the first person. Detective's Hunch. The radius of this perk is attached to your body, not the generator. So when this perk activates, make sure you're running around so you can find items that may not have been highlighted previously. Distortion. Remember that Distortion can get rid of your scratch marks for 10 seconds every time your aura is red, which can be extremely helpful in very niche situations. For example, if you figured out that the killer has I'm all ears, which is the perk that shows them your aura every time you fastball a window in chase, you can use Distortion as a much better version of Dance With Me. Diversion. You can use Diversion to distract Nemesis zombies. Dramaturgy. This is the new Nicolas Cage perk that gives you a 2-second mini sprint burst whenever you want, but then gives you a random good or bad effect. The worst effect you can get is becoming exposed for 12 seconds. Plus, this perk also makes you exhausted. So one of the best perk synergies is Vigil, because both your exposed and exhausted status effects will go away 30% faster. Deja Vu. Don't get tunnel visioned on the generators that Deja Vu has an effect on. Sometimes these gens are really unsafe and you'd be better off just popping one of those gens and leaving the other 2 undone. Empathic Connection. This perk is honestly just terrible, but you can pair it with other perks like Autodidact, Botany, and Desperate Measures to get really fast healing speeds. Empathy. A lot of people use Empathy to go for flashlight saves. If you're doing this, just make sure you don't completely throw the game just to follow someone around for a flashlight save. If the survivor is very far away and you're working on a gen, you're better off finishing that gen and then going to help the survivor. Fast Track. If a generator is close to finishing, try not to hit a great skill check because it'll consume all of your remaining tokens and will waste a lot of progression that you could have used on another gen. Flashbang. If you're going for flashbang saves, make sure you throw it right when the killer's hand leaves the survivor. Flip Flop. Pair this perk with a friend in Power Struggle to literally create an uncounterable situation if you go down on a pallet. If a friend is nearby, they can pallet save, but if the killer chases them away a little, it gives you time to build up your Power Struggle, essentially forcing the killer into a lose-lose situation. You can make this even stronger by using recovery perks like Unbreakable. Fogwise. To activate Fogwise, you need to hit great skill checks. So you can pair this perk with Stakeout, which converts your good skill checks into greats, which which will let you get a lot more value out of this perk. For the people, this is definitely one of the most underrated perks in the game. Nowadays, there are a ton of perks that'll help you while injured, and also a ton of perks that activate when you heal someone off the ground. Perks like Buckle Up, Vigil, or Made for This work very well with For the People. Friendly Competition. This perk only activates when you complete a gen, so you can 99 a gen and have your teammates come to you so you can all take advantage of that 5% gen speed. Guardian. Guardian is a pretty straightforward anti-tunnel perk, so I don't exactly have any tips for you besides maybe like pairing it with borrowed time to ensure that the survivor can escape the tunnel. Head on. There are certain lockers like these ones on Midwich where you can stall the killer for an extra few seconds with a friend. If you both hop into these lockers, the killer is forced to either leave you or pick one of you up out of the locker. If they do that, the other person can head on save them. Then the person that just got saved can hop back into their locker and do another stun before the killer can move again. Hope. If you're using this perk, use it aggressively. Take the pressure off of other survivors and try to force the killer to chase you. You'll have a huge advantage in chase with that 7% additional haste, especially against 4.4 killers. Hyper Focus. Pair this perk with Stakeout to get a lot more value out of those great skill checks that you missed. Inner Focus. This perk shows you the aura of the killer when a survivor close by gets hit, and you can pair this with Self-Preservation to make it very difficult for the killer to switch targets to you. Inner Healing. Do not waste a ton of time specifically looking for totems to activate this perk. It's usually better to play this game as though you don't have the perk, and then when you pass by a totem on your way to a gen, or if you just healed someone, you can cleanse it. Iron Will. Although Iron Will only reduces your grunts of pain by 75% now, if you crouch, it reduces it by even more, almost giving you complete silence. Kindred. This perk is already really strong, but it becomes borderline overpowered when paired with Open-Handed. You basically get wall hacks on the killer while someone's hooked, especially on double story maps like Gideon Meat Plant. Kinship. My tip is to use Reassurance instead. Leader. This is a very passive perk, so there's not much to it, but just remember that you need to let other people do actions while you have this perk on. For example, I see a lot of people who will open exit gates when their teammate is literally right next to them and could open it 25% faster. Left Behind. Just pair this perk with a key and then hide and let the killer close the hatch. If you try to look for the hatch while it's initially open, there's a 50-50 chance that the killer will find you before you can make it to the hatch. Just be patient and let them close it, and then look for the hatch and open it. Lightweight. With this perk, you're going to want to stay near places that are already relatively hard to follow scratch marks with. Places with a lot of walls and a lot of dark grass can make it very difficult for the killer to track you. Life. You don't need to always use your life the first time you vault a window and chase. If you want to try to loop that window a couple more times before using your life, you can save it just by slow vaulting the window. But remember, you do need to have enough distance from the killer to be able to do this. Low profile. If you're in a situation where this perk is active, you might be trying to escape through the exit gates. So you should know this exit gate trick. You can fill the progress bar up all the way until the letter A in the word escape without turning on any of the red lights on the switch. This can help give you enough time to finish opening the gate after the killer checks it to make sure you weren't working on it. Lucky Break. Make sure you're not bringing healing speed perks with this perk. Lucky Break recharges for every second you spend healing another person, so if your healing speeds are faster, you won't be getting as many seconds charged up. Made for this. If you're ever healing someone with this perk, make sure your body is on the closest sign to danger, so if the killer comes to you as you're finishing the heal, they'll target you first, but you'll be able to take the hit because of your endurance. Mettle of Man. When this perk is active, it shows your aura to the killer when you get healed. So this is really niche and really specific, but you can 99 your heal and then run the perk Distortion to be able to get rid of your scratch marks for 10 seconds basically whenever you want. Since this tip is really niche, I'll give you a more common one. If you ever take a hit while a killer is carrying a survivor, that also counts as a protection hit, so it's an easy way to build up the stacks, especially if you have endurance perks. No mither. Please always run this perk with Resilience and Made for This if you want to get any sort of value. No one left behind. Since you can see everybody's auras, always keep tabs on what they're doing. It can give you an absolute ton of info that can save the game. For example, you can see which exit gates have been worked on, or you can see which areas of the map your teammates have checked for NOED. Object of Obsession. Use this perk to figure out what aura reading perks the killer might have so that you can tell your teammates. You can easily call out Lethal Pursuer, Barbecue, I'm All Ears, and many other perks. You can even run anti-aura perks like Boon Shadow Step or Distortion to be able to read the killer's aura without them being able to read yours. Off the record. You can still be healed by another player while this perk is active if you want to keep your endurance. Then you can go play aggressive and try to help a teammate by taking 2 hits for them instead of 1. Open-handed. This perk doesn't stack anymore, so never have 2 people running it at the same time. Overcome. Haste still affects your movement speed even if you're walking. So you could run away behind a wall to fake your scratch marks in one direction, but then walk a completely different direction to confuse the killer. Overzealous. This is similar to Inner Healing in the sense that you probably should not waste time specifically looking for the totem, but instead should selectively choose when to cleanse the totem. Since this perk deactivates when you lose a health state, you don't want to cleanse a totem to activate it if you're in an unsafe position. Parental Guidance. Learn how to pallet vacuum so you can get more value out of this perk. To pallet vacuum, you run past the pallet to a certain point, then turn around and let go of your sprint button. This will make the killer think that you're not going to throw the pallet, so they're more likely to walk through it and get stunned. Pharmacy. This perk gives you a green medkit if you search a chest while injured. So if you 99 your heal and then go around the map searching every chest, you can get a bunch of green medkits for all of your teammates. Plot twist. This is another new Nicolas Cage perk and is probably the most fun perk to ever come to DBD. You can legit down yourself to hide from the killer, and if they don't pick you up by the time you recover yourself, you get fully healed and get a 4-second sprint burst. This can pair really well with Power Struggle since you can down yourself on a pallet early if the killer is coming to you and charge up Power Struggle before they can hit you. Plunderer's Instinct. If you get really lost on certain maps, you can use this perk almost as a waypoint marker. Since you can see the auras of dropped items, you can place items down near certain places you may want to come back to, such as Dole Totem spawns to check for Noed later in the match. This best works with toolboxes since you will most likely use them up early in the match, so there's no point in holding onto them anyway. Poised. Since you can now see generator progress on your HUD, make sure you're always paying attention to that with this perk on. It'll allow you to position yourself better since you know exactly when you're going to lose your scratch marks. Potential Energy. If you notice that a killer is holding a 3-gen while you still have 4 gens remaining, charge your potential energy on that one solo gen far away and use that to help break the 3-gen. It's worth it to spend that time breaking the 3-gen rather than just completing the 4th solo gen. Power Struggle. If you know you're about to go down, sometimes you don't want to go down directly on the pallet. It might make it too obvious that you have Power Struggle. Sometimes you may want to go down relatively close to a pallet so that you have time to wiggle if the killer immediately picks you up. This is especially good on God pallets where the killer is forced to walk through them to get a hook. Premonition. This is really specific, but Premonition does not work on Victor from the twins, so don't be scared when Victor sneaks up on you without you knowing. Prove Thyself. Don't fall into the trap of always repairing gens together. Repairing gens together can be one of the worst things that you can do in this game because if a killer interrupts you, they're now pressuring 2 people at once. Prove Thyself is more useful in situations where you absolutely need to get a certain dangerous gen done. Quick and Quiet. Just like Lithe, you can save this perk by slow vaulting instead of fast vaulting. So if you're in chase and you really want to throw them off, you can do this. Quick Gambit. This perk is pretty bad since the killer will likely want to go to the person on the gen instead of chasing you, but if you have your teammate running Technician, you can actually get some sort of value out of this perk since Technician reduces the distance that the killer can hear the gen repair sounds. Reactive Healing. This perk can actually work kind of as an anti-tunnel / anti-camping perk if you pair it with Resurgence and a medkit. With the Resurgence, you're automatically healed to 50% when unhooked, and if a teammate is 1-for-1ing with you and the killer hits the person unhooking you, Reactive Healing will boost you up to 75% healed, which means that you only have a few more seconds to go until you're fully healed. So if the killer starts to tunnel you, you'll be able to heal yourself in chase. Reassurance. Reassurance can work through floors as well, so if a survivor is hooked above or below you, you can activate it from a safe area away from a camping killer. This is really good for maps like Midwich where there's only a couple different ways to get up to the top story. Red Herring. Try to use this perk on generators that are in far corners of the map and use it right after a killer hooks a survivor. Assuming the killer doesn't have a perk like Barbecue, they'll feel inclined to go to that gen you just red herring since it's the only information they have. And since you put it on a gen far away, it wastes a lot of the killer's time. Renewal. It may be tempting to take a hit while you have endurance after getting unhooked so that you can get the burst of speed, but this will actually make Renewal ineffective since it'll only mend you and not heal you. So try to avoid using anything endurance related as much as possible while Renewal is activating. Repressed Alliance. Do not use this perk just because you have it. It can be very detrimental to your team if you're not allowing anybody to progress that gen, especially since the killer may not have even considered kicking it. You can, however, block the gen to prevent it from regressing from perks like Hex Ruin while you go get a save or something. Residual Manifest. Remember that you can use this perk to counter the killer's aura reading since they suffer from the blindness status effect for 30 seconds every time you successfully blind them. So you can use it in situations where you blind them while they're breaking a pallet, and then it might counter certain perks such as I'm All Ears, Darkness Revealed, or Nowhere to Hide, which is a pretty common killer perk. Resilience. Please, please, please bring a medkit with this perk and always 99 your heals unless you're going against an Oni. This will allow the perk to still be active without the vulnerability of being injured. And if you don't have a medkit, then always heal the other person before letting them heal you. Resurgence. Pair this perk with other healing perks in order to take full advantage of it. If you have a friend running Will Make It while you're running Resurgence, you'll be healed in 4 seconds after an unhook. Rookie Spirit. Use this perk to understand what perks the killer has early in the match. You can easily figure out if they have Jolt, Pain Res, Ruin, or even Pop if you pay attention to the regression of each generator. It allows you to get information on their build so you know what perks to counter. Saboteur. Since you can see the auras of Scourge hooks with this perk now, use this to your advantage. You can tell your teammates which hooks they should avoid dying around, as well as just saboing the Scourge hooks instead of the regular ones when the survivor is being carried. Scavenger. Pair this with perks that have other objectives such as inner healing so that when you refill your toolbox, you don't have to repair while you have the 50% debuff to repair speeds, but you'll still be doing something productive. Scene Partner. This is another new Nicolas Cage perk that shows you the aura of the killer for 5 seconds whenever you look at them, but it causes you to scream. A lot of people think that you can run this perk with Calm Spirit, which prevents you from screaming in order to mitigate the downside of this perk. However, Scene Partner is activated by the scream itself, so Calm Spirit just completely stops the perk from working. Self-Aware. This perk is not meant for walking around the map all game. Please stop walking around the map if you're nowhere near the killer. You're detrimenting the entire team. Instead, this perk should be used for only 2 things. 1, getting your exhaustion back in chase, and 2, preventing the entity from blocking windows. If you're walking in chase and not in the killer's field of view, the game will think that you're no longer being chased, which resets the number of window vaults that you can use before it gets blocked. Self-care. Don't heal yourself every time you're injured. This perk is such a trap for new players since they don't like being injured. If you're healing every time you're injured, you are wasting so much time that you could be spending doing more important things like gens. Instead, you should use self-care only in specific situations. One of the best examples of when to actually heal with self-care is when all of the gens are done. Usually at this point in the match, it doesn't matter how long you spend healing because being healed is more important in the endgame, so you can take hits and help your teammates, as well as just making it easier for you to escape. Self-preservation. Be more risky with this perk than you think you should be. It'll probably confuse the killer even more. Instead of running away from the killer, try looping around something to get behind where they just were. They won't look back to where they just were because in their brain, there's no reason to check a place that they were just in. Situational awareness. When a killer downs a survivor while you're working on a gen, it shows you the auras of every other survivor. Use this to give you information on what gens they're doing, or if they're being completely useless by just crouching around in a corner nowhere near the killer. If they are being useless, then you know that it's just sometimes more worth to work on gens rather than healing them because it'll be wasting your time anyway. Slippery meat. Never run this perk unless you're with a group of friends that are all bringing Vigo's Jar of Salty Lips and up the ante. Small game. Remember that small game will ping totems through floors, so if you're going insane trying to find a specific totem, it may just be on the floor above or below you. Smash hit. After using this perk once, the killer will likely not want to get stunned since they want to avoid giving you the sprint burst. So use this to your advantage and be more greedy with the pallets. You can definitely get a couple extra loops in since the killer will be paranoid about getting stunned. Then hit them with a pallet vacuum and activate your smash hit anyway. Soul Survivor. This perk is absolutely atrocious and you should never use it, but if you do decide to use it, pair it with Wake Up to let you open gates 65% faster. Solidarity. Don't feel like you always need to heal someone else before you if you're using this perk. If you're dead on hook and the person next to you has 0 hook states, you should absolutely let them heal you first. Sure, you lose 8 seconds of efficiency, but the trade-off is totally worth it on the chance that the killer comes over to you. They'll likely want to chase the injured person before you so you can get to a safe position. Soul Guard. Have a friend run for the people and you basically get another health state that you can use to waste the killer's time even more. Spine Chill. Don't be scared with this perk and run away from whatever you're doing whenever it activates. Sometimes the killer may light your Spine Chill up when they're just chasing a nearby survivor. If something like that is happening, you usually don't have any reason to leave what you were doing. Sprint Burst. Stop trying to save your Sprint Burst. This is the biggest mistake I see people make, and it's why most people don't realize that this is the best exhaustion perk in the game. When you're learning how to use Sprint Burst, pretend like it's not even there. Don't worry about saving it ever. Legitimately pretend like it's not there and you'll start to learn the timing of how often you get your exhaustion back depending on what you're doing. This is a very difficult perk to use properly, but when you generally know the timing of how often you get your exhaustion back, you can start to manage your exhaustion so well that you can start to use it in chase by 99ing it or outside of chase to get to objectives quicker. Also, if the killer is using Fearmonger, it just makes it even easier for you to 99 your sprint burst. So if the killer's coming to hit you, you don't have to waste your sprint burst immediately. Stakeout. Stakeout is a very simple perk. Just use it with other perks that give certain effects when you hit great skill checks since you'll be able to get more value out of them. Streetwise. This is another extremely simple perk. Just only bring it if you're bringing good items like medkits or commodious toolboxes. And don't bring it if you're using flashlights because you're never ever going to use up the flashlight regardless if you have this perk or not. Teamwork, Collective Stealth. Pair this perk with other co-op perks such as Blood Pact and Prove Thyself so you could feel like this perk is doing anything useful. Teamwork, Power of 2. This is actually a pretty decent perk to have, especially in endgame, because you can also use Made for this and Hope and maybe another haste perk to be faster than the killer itself. Technician. A lot of people forget that this perk also reduces the audible range of your repair noises, so you can repair gens somewhat close to the killers without them knowing. Tenacity. If you have this perk on, try to go down with your friend nearby. They can hopefully distract the killer while you're down so you can get to a pallet or a nearby patch of grass to make yourself difficult to find. This is not happening. This is probably one of the worst perks in the entire game, so just don't run this. It barely makes the skill check success zones bigger, and it's not worth running over perks like Stakeout. Troubleshooter. You can use this perk for some really unexpected info on what your teammates are doing and where they are on the map. Since it shows you where the most progressed gen is while being chased by the killer, you can look at the HUD to see if there are other survivors working on it. This can tell you a lot of info of where your teammates are and where they might go after completing that gen. Unbreakable. If you ever go down, start recovering immediately. I see a lot of new survivors trying to crawl away before they start recovering. This is very, very useless unless you're using tenacity, so just always start recovering the second you get downed, even if you're not using Unbreakable. Your teammates will thank you. Up the ante. Luck only affects your self-unhook escape chance and nothing else. So this perk is pretty much useless unless you and 3 other friends are all running this perk with Slippery Meat and Vigo's Jar of Salty Lips. Urban Evasion. This perk is a complete noob trap. I see so many baby survivors urban evasioning around the map when they're nowhere near the killer. This does nothing but waste time. You should be running if the killer is on the other side of the map. The only time this perk is ever useful is if you need to crouch over Hag's traps, Pyramid Head's trails, or in Victor's idle stance. It can also be useful on certain loops against against Huntress or Deathslinger 2, but the odds of that happening are so rare that it's not worth bringing this perk at all. I know it'll frustrate a lot of you newer survivors to hear that this is an awful perk, but just trust me when I say that all it's doing is slowing down your team. Vigil. Most people just use this perk to pair it with exhaustion perks, but remember it also affects a ton of other status effects, including blindness, broken, exposed, hemorrhage, hindred, and oblivious. This can open up a ton of new non-exhaustion perk synergies, and this perk is literally a direct counter to some killers that cause you to be hindered, like Clown. Visionary. My tip for this perk is to just stop using it and learn where gens spawn. It's not difficult to find gens at all, and on indoor maps, there's always an indicator of where a gen is. On Gideon Meat Plant, there's always a generator next to these closed sliding doors, and on other indoor maps, there's always flashing lights near non-completed gens. Wake Up. If you have a coordinated team, this perk is actually very strong. You can go to a door right before the last gen is popped and start working on it almost instantly. If everyone has adrenaline as well, they can get to your door, and by the time they're there, the door will most likely be open. This is what Aaron, Alf, Hens, and I did on our Dead by Daylight speedruns, and it was absolutely insane. Before we move on to the next perk, a quick reminder that if you download War Thunder for free using my link below, you'll gain access to a large free bonus pack with multiple premium vehicles, a premium account, boosters, and much more. We'll make it. My biggest tip is to straight up use this perk more. It is so unbelievably underrated. But in all seriousness, you need to be more aggressive about getting unhooks while using this perk. Sure, it's good for healing someone you just unhooked, but since it lasts for 90 seconds, it's also a really useful tool to get out of a slugging situation, since you can pick survivors up from the ground twice as fast. Pair that with We're Gonna Live Forever and the new Buckle Up if you want to completely destroy the killer's pressure if they're slugging. We're Gonna Live Forever. Even if you know that you don't have time to pick up a survivor being slugged before the killer comes back, it's still generally worth it to heal them as much as you can. Even if you get them close to being picked up, it opens up a ton of new ways to get out of the situation. It makes it easier for other teammates to pick them up, or the slug survivor could even have Unbreakable. You never know. Windows of opportunity. If you're a new player, I would actually recommend that you stop using this perk. It's harder to learn the map when you're just on autopilot going to the closest resource to you. Take it off and try to actually learn how tiles and maps are structured. Then when you're really experienced, you can put it back on and see which tiles you've got and which pallets your teammates threw down, so you know what areas to avoid. Wiretap. Although this perk is showing you the killer's aura when they're close to the generator, it does not work with open-handed. Wiretap cannot change its aura rating radius, likely because it'd be too strong with open-handed. If you learned something new, drop a like and come check out this insane video that I spent 3 months working on.